My name is Sarah Thompson, 28 years old, balancing the grueling demands of medical school while waitressing at Joe's Diner to keep the lights on. Life was a whirlwind, but everything changed the moment he walked in. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and carried himself with a quiet confidence that seemed to shift the atmosphere. His name was James Anderson, a 30-year-old software engineer, and that day, he chose to sit in my section. "What can I get you?" I asked, trying to sound professional despite my pounding heart. "Coffee, black," he said, flashing a disarming grin. "And your number, if you're not too busy." I laughed it off, shaking my head. "Sorry, I don't date customers. Company policy." But James wasn't one to give up easily. For 2 weeks, he came in every single day, always sitting in my section, always with that same charming smile. Eventually, I gave in. "Fine," I said, crossing my arms. "One date. But don't get your hopes up, Mr. Software." That one date turned into 6 months of bliss. James wasn't like anyone I'd ever met, kind, understanding, and utterly unfazed by my humble circumstances. He saw me for who I was, not for what I did, but I couldn't shake my doubts. "James, are you sure about this?" I asked one night, my voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, look at you and look at me." He took my hand, his gaze unwavering. "Sarah, you're the most incredible woman I've ever met. Your job doesn't define you. You do." And just like that, he swept me off my feet. One moonlit evening, as the waves lapped at the shore, James dropped to one knee. "Sarah Thompson," he said, his voice steady yet full of emotion, "will you marry me?" Tears streamed down my face as I choked out the words. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. But our fairy tale hit its first obstacle when I met his parents. The Anderson estate was a sprawling mansion that screamed old money, and Robert and Elizabeth Anderson were every bit as intimidating as their home. "So, Sarah," Elizabeth began, her tone laced with condescension, "James tells us you're a waitress." I squared my shoulders, refusing to cower. "Yes, I work at a diner to support myself through medical school." Robert scoffed, his expression dismissive. "Medical school? Please, we know your type. You're just after our son's money." Before I could respond, James stood, his voice firm. "That's enough. Sarah is brilliant and hardworking. I love her. And we're getting married." Robert's face turned crimson. "If you marry this waitress, you're cut off. No inheritance, no support. Nothing." I felt my heart sink, but James didn't hesitate. He took my hand. His eyes locked on his father's. "Then I'm cut off," he said, "because I'm marrying Sarah, with or without your blessing." As we left the mansion, my mind was racing. "James, are you sure about this? It's your family." He stopped, pulling me into a soft kiss. "You're my family now, Sarah. We'll figure this out together." The months that followed were a whirlwind. We planned a modest wedding, pinching every penny, but the Andersons weren't done. Rumors spread like wildfire. Claims that I was a gold digger, a liar, even a criminal. The gossip reached Joe's Diner, where my boss reluctantly let me go. "Sarah, I'm sorry," he said, his face heavy with guilt. "The Andersons threatened to pull their investments if I kept you on." I was crushed, but James was furious. "They can't do this," he fumed. "It's not right." Amid the chaos, James's younger sister, Emma, reached out. We met discreetly at a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. "I can't openly support you guys," she admitted, sliding an envelope across the table. "But I want to help." Inside was a check that made my breath catch. "Emma, we can't." "You can and you will," she insisted. "It's my money, and I believe in you too." The wedding day finally arrived. The small church was simple but beautiful, and as I walked down the aisle, my heart swelled. James stood at the altar, his eyes filled with love, but the empty seats where his family should have been were a stark reminder of all we'd lost. During our vows, James's voice wavered slightly. Sarah, you are my family now. No matter what life throws at us, we'll face it together. Tears streamed down my face as I responded. James, you've shown me what true love and loyalty mean. I promise to stand by you always. As we shared our first kiss as husband and wife, the small crowd erupted in cheers. But later, during our first dance, I noticed a flicker of pain in James's eyes. Are you okay? I whispered. He pulled me closer. I have you. That's all I need. Still, I silently vowed to ensure James never regretted his choice. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with love and determination, I knew we could weather any storm, together. I glanced at James, his warm smile lighting up the reception. I'll be right back, I murmured, excusing myself. My heart pounded as I slipped into a side room where Lisa was waiting, my white coat draped over her arm. My hands trembled slightly as I took it from her. You've got this, Dr. Thompson, Lisa said with a wink. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself and stepped back into the reception. The buzz of laughter and chatter gradually faded as I approached the microphone. The weight of anticipation hung in the air. Thank you all for coming today, I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through me. But there's something I need to share. I turned to James, who looked up at me. Confusion etched across his face. James, I said softly, I haven't been entirely honest with you. I'm not just a waitress. A collective murmur rippled through the crowd. Before I could continue, Dr. Chen stepped forward, a proud smile on her face. Allow me to introduce Dr. Sarah Thompson, she announced, her voice ringing with authority. Top of her class and recipient of our prestigious neurosurgery fellowship. Dr. Foster chimed in from across the room, and the youngest recipient of the Breakthrough Research Grant in the hospital's history. Gasps and whispers erupted as James stood rooted to the spot, his mouth agape. I turned back to him, my gaze unwavering. I've been working double shifts and studying in secret, I explained. I wanted to surprise you, to prove to you and to everyone else that I'm more than they assumed. James crossed the room in 3 long strides, lifting me off my feet in a crushing embrace. You amazing, brilliant woman, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I'm so proud of you. As we held each other, Emma stood, clinking her glass to silence the room. I've known about Sarah's accomplishments for months, she confessed. Her voice wavered, but her resolve was clear. And I'm ashamed of how our family has treated her. Sarah is brilliant, kind, and exactly the person James deserves. Michael, already unsteady from too much champagne, stumbled forward. James, man, I'm sorry. I was wrong about Sarah. Can we? James cut him off sharply. Save it, Michael. You've shown your true colors. We're done. I touched James's arm gently. He's not worth it, love, I murmured. The night eventually wound down, and James and I found a quiet corner to steal a moment alone. I can't believe you kept this from me, he said, shaking his head in amazement. Are you mad? I asked nervously. He cupped my face in his hands, his eyes soft and full of love. Mad? Sarah, I'm in awe of you. You're the most incredible person I've ever met. A few days later, we were on a plane to Bali, finally escaping the months of stress and secrecy. For 2 blissful weeks, we explored ancient temples, lounged on pristine beaches, and reveled in the joy of simply being together. One night, as we sipped cocktails on the balcony of our private villa, I sighed. I can't believe we pulled it off. James grinned. You pulled it off, Dr. Thompson. I'm just lucky enough to be along for the ride. When we returned home, life shifted into high gear. My research on neuroregeneration had sparked a buzz in the medical community. Dr. Thompson, your findings could revolutionize stroke treatment, my mentor gushed during a conference call. Meanwhile, James's tech company had landed a major contract developing software for medical imaging. One evening, he burst into our apartment, barely able to contain his excitement. Guess who just became the youngest VP in company history, he announced. I squealed and jumped into his arms. I'm so proud of you. As we celebrated our successes, the Andersons made their move. One Sunday afternoon, they arrived at our door, their expressions heavy with regret. Sarah, James, Robert began, his voice faltering. We've made a terrible mistake. We'd like to make amends. Perhaps we could all have dinner. James didn't hesitate. No, he said firmly. You had your chance. We're done. I nodded in agreement. Please leave. We have nothing to say to you. As they walked away, I felt an incredible weight lift. Their approval no longer mattered. A month later, news broke of a scandal involving Robert's company, insider trading and unethical practices. Their carefully curated image crumbled overnight. Emma called to tell us the fallout. Mom's been blacklisted from every charity board in the city, she said. They're social pariahs now. How are you holding up? I asked her. Honestly? Relieved. She admitted. I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not. I've moved out, and I'd love to spend more time with you both. Emma quickly became a cherished part of our lives. We spent weekends together, hosted game nights, and even encouraged her to pursue a romance with one of James's colleagues, a far cry from the stiff suitors her parents had once paraded before her. As for Michael, karma found its way to him as well. He lost his job after being accused of harassing an intern. His betrayal of James was only the surface of his flaws. A year later, James and I stood on stage at a charity gala, not as guests, but as honorees. The ballroom was packed with the city's elite, gathered to celebrate our contributions to medicine and technology. As I looked out at the audience, my gaze landed on James. In his eyes, I saw every struggle we'd endured, every triumph we'd claimed, and the deep, unwavering love that had carried us through it all. We had faced prejudice, betrayal, and countless obstacles. But standing there, celebrated for our achievements and surrounded by true friends, I knew we had won. Not just against the Andersons or the naysayers, but against the belief that wealth and status define a person's worth. Our journey had been one of resilience, love, and a fierce determination to rise above. And together, we had proved that true value lies in character, integrity, and the courage to defy expectations.